Alberta is considering introducing a bill that could force drug users into treatment against their will. The Compassionate Intervention Act would give police, family, or legal guardians the power to refer addicts to involuntary treatment. If this is established, it would be the first of its kind in Canada. For more on how this would or could work, we are joined by Andrew Hathaway. He's a professor of criminal justice and public policy at Guelph University. Good morning.
Good morning.
A representative from the Alberta Premier's office told us that this policy is just one of many options that they're exploring to try and deal with an addiction crisis. They said this would be an attempt to intervene in tough situations without resorting to the criminal system. But an organization representing families who have lost loved ones to drug poisoning are calling on Alberta not to implement this legislation, saying this is only going to cause further harm or even death. What kind of consequences could forced treatment have on people who are struggling with addiction?
Well, this is I think, clearly not a good idea, but that's something that doesn't necessarily matter in this case. This is an example of conservative policy being put into place, presumably to chum for the base, so to speak. Those folks who are less informed about addiction issues think of it primarily as a criminal justice issue. This is the kind of policy that makes sense to them, right? The idea that addicts need that push into treatment, and this is the solution to the problem. In a way, it's backlash against harm reduction oriented programming, against the move towards decriminalization we're seeing elsewhere. So this presumably is a way of appealing to another segment of the voting public. The word compassion in here, I think, is probably a bit of a misnomer. I think that's a way of balancing out the intent, so to speak. But make no mistake about it, forcing people into treatment is a conservative policy response that goes against years, if not decades, of public policy programming in addictions.
There are both anecdotal stories and clinical research that show that forcing people who aren't ready to go into a rehab program doesn't seem to work. So I feel like it would be an even more expensive proposition because you have people in, they'll continue to have to go into these involuntary programs. Involuntary treatment is already used on people who struggle with mental health problems in BC under certain circumstances. What kind of results has that policy produced?
Forcing people into addiction treatment, the problem with that, of course, is that people need to be ready for addiction treatment. It's a tenet within addiction treatment circles. 12-step is primarily where folks end up who've been found their way into addiction, either voluntarily or involuntarily, right? We have the first part of the process is detox. We have, a period of in-house treatment, and then there's the much longer-term task of maintaining sobriety. And that's where we run into problems with this kind of involuntary treatment. It might make sense initially. There may indeed be some cases where folks speak of hitting rock bottom, and that was the initial step that they needed on their path to sobriety. The problem is, in the long term, treatment is notoriously difficult anyway. When we look at follow-up rates, 18 months post-treatment, for example, they tend to be fairly low, even under the best circumstances, somewhere in the area of 20%. And that's under the best circumstances. So the idea of involuntarily forcing people into treatment goes against that. And as you indicated, it doesn't really bode well for longer-term success.
Andrew Hathaway will be following this story closely, seeing where it ends up. Thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.